Thank you. Can you hear me now? It's all good? Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for having me here today. How'd you like the weather today? Pretty nice, huh? It was just absolutely perfect. So anyway, thank you for coming up to hear me today. First off, I'd like to thank Bruce Jovig for inviting me here today and the University of North Dakota. As Dan mentioned, both my parents are alums, my baby sister's an alum, and compliments of my father. Here's an aerial photograph of UND from 1952. And before I start my story on innovation, I thought I'd mention I'd like to thank my parents, Loring and Merrill Johnson. And my dad's an engineer. He got his BSEE from UND, and he married the prettiest girl on campus. My mom literally used to stop traffic. She's drop-dead gorgeous, and my dad actually laid out a battle plan to win the heart of his lady fair and won the hand of Judge Austin's daughter, and she's a rabid artist. So here you've got this rabid artist marrying this archetype engineer. What has that got anything to do with innovation? We shall see. So the topic of my lecture today is innovation. What is it? Why do you need it? And how do you do it? I'm a very, very pragmatic innovation consultant, and I believe you can't really learn something unless you can apply it. So first off, I'm going to bore you with a didactic lecture, some theoretical postulates that'll put you to some sleep, some working models, a favorite tool, and then I'm going to follow that up with a case study. I believe that anybody who leaves here should leave with an arrow that they can put in their quiver, a tool that they can use. So first off, why do we need innovation? And I'm sure those of you at the center know that innovation offers new perspectives on solving problems. It offers new markets. It's a radical change versus incremental change. The favorite phrase is it's revolution versus evolution. Innovation lowers costs, better production quality, greater capacity, and enhances quality of life. And if we take a look at one innovation, the printing press. Let's see, does it fit the model? Does it lower costs? Oh, by the way, if I got to work, everybody's got to work. So I'm going to be does lower costs? Yes. Oh, good, because I can outweigh any pregnant pause. Better production quality, greater capacity, quality of life. And if we take a look at the macro environment, we can see that today there's a lot of competition for resources, rapid development of technology, and multimedia saturation. There's a lot of competition for resources, recognition, and funding. So first thing I'm going to ask you to do before we get started is I want you guys to give me the name of 3 people that are alive today that you think are creative. People or organizations that you think are creative.
Steve Jobs.
Creative. We got Steve Jobs.
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. No, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Stephen Hawking.
Who?
Stephen Hawking.
Hawking. Okay, I need 3 people that you think are inventive.
Dean Kamen.
How do you spell the last name?
Kamen.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Segway.
Yep.
Official.
Who's inventive? What company? What person? And the next one's even harder. So, who's inventive?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. One more. One more inventive person that's alive today.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg. All right. Now I need the name of 3 innovators. 3 innovators.
Bruce Jovic.
Jovic.
That was good company.
2 more innovators.
Alan Klopman.
How do you spell it?
Kalpmeyer.
One more. No companies that are in it?
That one could be Sears.
How do you spell it?
C-I-R-R-E-S.
Oh. Okay, so what we've discovered, we kind of put these on the board, and now as we start looking at people who are creative, people who are inventive, and people who are innovators, what's the difference? And there is a difference. It's a subtle difference, but it's real important. So the first thing we're going to talk about is creators, adapters, inventors, and innovators. And creators are people who generate new ideas, new combinations of ideas. Everybody here is creative. It's part of who we're made up of. So I'm going to ask you all to do an exercise. Simon says do this. Simon says do this. Simon says do this. Now, as you can see, my left thumb is on top of my right thumb. The left hemisphere of the brain controls the right side of the body. I tend to reside in the right hemisphere of my brain, which tends to be three-dimensional. That's where linguistic and music houses. How many people here have their left thumb on top? About 30% of Americans have their left thumb on top. How many people have their right thumb on top? You're going to notice there tend to be more. These are the people that are very deliberate, they're linear, they're logical thinkers, and we were raised that way. 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4. And how many people couldn't do it? About 3% of Americans, you'll watch in the audience, they can't do it. That's because they tend to reside out of the frontal cortex. So you can see there are some people that live in the creative part of the brain, the right part of the brain. Now, everybody's creative, and we're going to find out how creative you are. Make a fist and turn the tip of your thumb out as far as you can without taking it off your thumb. There's a physical correlation between your level of creativity and how far you turn your thumb out. As you can see, I'm not the world's most creative person. Blue shirt person, what's your name? Dan?
Yes.
Okay, you can see his thumb almost looks broken with that. And so there's actually a physical correlation between your level of creativity and how far you turn your thumb out. So we all have creativity. Why aren't we all innovators? Now, adapters are people that typically have a sufficiency of ideas, and they tend to work when in current paradigms. They don't go outside of the box. They tend to stretch the box, and they tend to have incremental improvements. And therefore, their ideas are more readily grasped because they don't go outside the box. They kind of stretch the box. And inventors are people that develop stuff that's entirely new. Entirely new. Nobody's ever done it before. Well, what's an innovator? Aren't they creative? Aren't they inventive? Yeah. Innovators are creative, inventive people who take their ideas into the mainstream. Into the mainstream. How many times have you had the world's most brilliant creative idea, and all it takes is one person to go, and you don't do it? Or you have an idea or a new thought, and you don't follow it up. Innovators are people who take their ideas, their inventions, and their creations into the mainstream. They overcome barriers. They go over, around, or through anything or anybody in their way to take their ideas into the mainstream. Now, the interesting thing about innovation is it's best understood through telling stories. And my favorite innovation has to do with the telephone switch. How many people remember those old movies where you'd see telephone operators physically connecting people to who the people they're calling? Well, you know who invented the phone switch that revolutionized the telecommunications industry? It was a mortician. It was a funeral director. He invented the phone switch that revolutionized telecommunications. And what happened is one of the operators, somebody'd call to, they needed his services, and the operator would connect the caller to her relatives and circumvent his business. So he had to find a way to get around this live operator. So you tend to look at innovators, and you'll notice that sometimes they come from way outside a general school of thought. Now, this is Schermerhorn's model of innovation. And his process of innovation includes idea creation, discovering a potential new product, experimentation, final application,